hide it in here. It will make for less wiring I'll have to do, and I'll just put... God only knows where that fucked off to. In this video, we're back with the SLK again. I wanted to take care of some maintenance items first before I started dumping huge money into modifications. So I did order some nice new LED headlight bulbs. I did order a new mass airflow sensor. I kept getting faults for it regardless. So I ordered a new one. I'm going to throw that on. I might at the same time build an intake, but right now I'm having a hard time sourcing the pipe, the Y pipe, to connect the two instead of spending a bunch of money, but we'll get to that. I also got a new power steering pump because it whines. Not sure if you're able to hear it in previous videos, but it's extremely obnoxious. It makes the car sound like a piece of crap. So we'll get that cranked away. And then the last thing we'll do, I had a bunch of people ask me how was such an awesome skid racer in this car when it's a car that you can't fully disable the traction control on. So what people have done is there's a fuse, I think it's like F15 or F5, I can't remember. You pull the fuse and that disables everything. Now, it's great for a quick short video, but it really won't work in the long run because it disables the traction control, but also the speedometer. You get a whole tree of faults and everything else. So what I'm gonna do, I'll probably wire in a switch to one of the ABS sensors, probably this front left one because it's the closest, and then put a nice switch in the dash so I could just flip it, and the only thing that I'll have is some ABS lights on the dash and be able to fully disable traction control. Either way, we'll dive in. Probably start with the mass airflow sensor because it's easy to get to. Then we'll move on to the power steering pump. Get the headlights or headlight bulbs installed and go from there. So the power steering job is almost done. Like I've said in previous videos, I'm not a DIY channel, but I'll give some pointers here and there. So I wanted to stop at this point before I finish it up and give a couple suggestions. For one, if I was to rate this job on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably rate it at annoying is the best way I could put it. It's not a difficult job to do, but there is one bolt that is difficult to get to if you choose to not recover the AC. Now, I'm not interested in recovering the AC. Most of anybody that's doing this at home isn't either because you don't have an AC machine, and tree huggers don't like it when you vent into the atmosphere. Either way, so without removing the AC, it makes it a lot more difficult to get to this one bolt. And it's one of the ones that seems like it's a mile long. And that's probably the most annoying part of this entire job is just that one bolt. Everything else is pretty straightforward. You just remove the belt and remove some bolts. But I stopped at this point because I kind of wanted to show a couple things I came across and what could probably save somebody a bunch of time and effort if they're doing it themselves without removing the AC. Okay. So obviously the new pump is mounted. So the most difficult part is that bolt down there. This AC line is in the way and makes your life insanely difficult. But to give you an illustration, this is the old pump facing up, so this is facing up. If you're facing it, you're looking at it this way. This one is just a ground stud, so don't forget to put it back on. This one's fairly easy to get to. You don't have to have Burger King hands to get to that one. However, this one here, this is the one that tested my patience. So best thing I found to do with that is I have this bungee cord on this AC line to kind of push it out of the way so I could get to it down there. I removed this module that's mounted here, and I loosened these power steering lines, and I loosened this line as well, so I have a little bit of wiggle room to get the bolts in. Everything else is easy and straightforward, but getting to that one and actually being to ratchet it and remove it was just the most annoying thing I've done in a while. So like I said, it's not a difficult job, it's pretty straightforward, but that one bolt is really annoying to get to. And if you are doing this job, just have some patience, get a little bit creative, and make sure you have open ends that are ratcheting style, because you won't be able to get a ratchet in there unless you go and drain the AC system. Now, I had a couple other plans for this episode. I wanted to build my own dual ram intake for the car. Unfortunately, due to all these parts issues and supply chain issues, some of the parts I needed to build it, I can't find anywhere online. So, till they become available again, I can't do much with it unless I find somebody that can maybe 3D print me some parts. There's an intake available, that dual ram style, that I essentially will copy on my own. It's made by a company that is called Needs Wings. However, that kit is like $800 for an intake, and that's almost a quarter of the cost that I paid for this car, so I'm not going to spend that on an intake to gain 10, 12, maybe 15 horsepower at most. So the final thing we're going to be doing in this episode is disabling the traction control. You have a switch, and when you hit it, it disables traction control and allows you to do pretty sick burnouts if you're good at it. However, up until I think it was 2008, or on the W204 chassis, Mercedes did not allow its customers to turn off the stability control. So the alternative is to somehow bypass it or disable it. I did some research on forums, and it turns out people are immensely scared of turning off traction control. So on a sub 250 horsepower car, people think that the moment you turn off stability, you will immediately die. That being said, this is a disclaimer that I'm telling you not to do this on your own car unless you're a professional driver on a closed course, or you inevitably will for sure kill yourself with this 220-ish horsepower car with the stability control turned off. With the disclaimer out of the way we're going to go about it is right here somewhere in the center console. From my research, there is a yaw sensor. Mercedes calls it something different, but it's essentially what tells the car that it's leaning or it's on a tow truck or whatever else. So we're going to take the center console out. I'm going to tap into it to essentially disable it, because that system works with the traction control and everything else. I'll just put a simple toggle switch. I probably will hide it in here so it's not an eyesore, and then I'll be able to flip it. I'll get some warnings for ABS and whatnot. ABS will be disabled, but as I mentioned before, my mama didn't raise no bitch, and we'll deal without it. But if you have a sports car and you're going to do track day stuff with it or autocrosses, you got to be able to defeat the traction control or stability control. So we'll tear this apart. We'll do that. That will probably be the last thing we do on this episode, unless I magically in the next 24 hours come up with an intake setup. Then I'll build that. But it should be pretty easy to do, pretty straightforward. So we'll knock that out.
I've been dreaming on in my head like I've seen it. A life worth living is a life with meaning. I'll do what I love till my heart stops beating. I'm feeding this demon. Got a taste, can't erase bitterness in my face. Work a job every day till your dreams fade away. Like a card, never change. Play the game that we say. I need a break. Time staying strong.
Okay. So now that we got the center console all removed, a couple pointers. There's this vacuum thing that's the lock for the center console. So when you lock the doors, it locks the center console. This is for that information thing slash whatever it is, Mercedes assist thing that it has inside there. And this clip here is what secures that inside the thing. You have these plugs, the cigarette lighter, and then it's the two Phillips here, a couple of 10 mils back there. Pretty straightforward. You just got to slide it over the e-brake. You have to slide this boot off of it. And this is the sensor in question, the yaw rate sensor or whatever. It's originally mounted here. I took it off from here just to pull the part number off of it to verify that's for sure what it is. I just googled the part number, confirmed it. So I'm just gonna probe her here really quick, see which one's power, which one's ground and whatnot, and just tap into that. Ground over here somewhere. Hopefully find a nice ground. Run the switch in. This is the switch I'll be using. It's just a simple on-off switch with a light on it. I'm probably not going to bother wiring in the light. I don't think it really matters. And we'll put her back together. Okay, so here we are. This is that sensor as we were speaking about, the yaw sensor. I did probe the back of these. I ran the car just to see, and this one here is the voltage supply. And then when you unplug it, you get a warning on the dash that says ESP, and that would make it disabled. Easy breezy. So I'm just going to strip this back a little bit, tap into here, ground probably to this, and wire the switch in. Then we'll test it and see. I'm assuming, because I had to cycle the ignition for the warning to go away, but at least you'll be able to disable it on the flip of a switch and cycle ignition and back in business. And you could be safe and protected by the cushion of computers slowing you down.
Can't erase bitterness in my face. Work a job every day till your dreams fade away. Like a card, never change. Play the game that we say. I need a break. I'm staying strong. Need to move on to be what I want. I'll keep dreaming on. I'm staying strong. Need to move on to be what I want. I'll keep dreaming on.
Okay, so we got it wired in. Obviously we got the ground, the load and supply. Right now with the switch on means traction control is working. And then as soon as we flip the switch, boom, there's our ESP light. And that is traction control.
It's not how you fall, till you get right back up. That's how you get tough. Calluses on my hands so rough, yeah, I call your bluff. I'm not the one, mess with me, come out with none. Cause I'm so done, you had your fun. And now you're gonna face down the barrel of the gun. Cause I got a full clip, put your name on it. But I'ma let you slide cause you ain't worth it. I'm staying strong, need to move on to be what I want. I'll keep dreaming on. I'm staying strong, need to move on to be what I want. I'll keep dreaming.
Okay, so this is the final product. As you could see, The switch is here in the center console. It's traction control off, traction control on. It's not in the way. Sorry, I gotta vacuum it. Everything looks OEM. I'm good with that. I guess we gotta test how it works. All right, just for anybody that doesn't know, this is the traction control off button, and it lights up this obnoxious triangle on here when it's off, and that's just traction control that limits wheel spin. To disable the stability control, I had to, put in this switch. So once you flip it, you'll get a message here, and that one says EAS ESP. So there's an ESP fault. Luckily that big obnoxious triangle doesn't come up, and she should be good to go. Alright, so obviously we gotta test our handiwork here. I left the ESP on and just flipped my switch here. I guess the only thing to do is see if she'll limit me any power. Seems like she did. That doesn't seem to be working. Well, some disappointing news. Even with the ESP malfunction on, it still seems to want to cut in and not let you spin around. Doesn't make much sense to me, since I obviously successfully have given it an ESP fault, and from my understanding, when the system's faulty, it won't work. I'm gonna have to go back to the drawing board to figure out why it's still insistent on it. I might honestly end up going with my original idea I had when I first was thinking about it before I wasted my life Googling onto forums and whatnot, and that is just to tap into an ABS sensor and put that on the switch, force an ABS fault, and then as soon as the ABS system is offline or faulty, I don't imagine that it will try to do anything to engage stability control. So, again, sorry for disappointing. I will go back to the drawing board with this and figure out why it still works even with the ESP fault. Man, I'm really disappointed. Between breaking all these plastics and this car still insisting on having traction control even with a ESP fault, I'm pretty confused by this. So, well, on that terrible disappointment, I guess we'll leave the video off here. Some more research why even with the ESP disabled, it still kicks in and limits you. Maybe in that time frame I'll also be able to locate some parts to build that intake that are currently unavailable, but I am very disappointed in this situation. I'm very disappointed myself, but I guess you win some, you lose some. Either way, thanks for watching. Please comment, like, subscribe. Any suggestions? If you know anything about bypassing these systems, leave me a comment and we'll go from there.